let me bring in Professor Brahma Chilani. Professor Chilani, both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President Donald Trump are seen as tough negotiators, but both are also seen as deal makers in their country's interests. So do you see their interests converge strategically as the world watches this meeting very closely?
That's a good question, Gaurav. In Trump's first term, ties between the US and India really thrived. This was the best of times for the relationship between the two countries. And under President Joe Biden, this relationship began to fray. So this personal rapport between Trump and Modi can play a pivotal role in restoring the relationship. However, we should not forget that Trump's MAGA vision, Make America Great Again vision, collides with Modi's Make in India initiative. And that's the reason why trade has become such a hot button issue. Trump has already shown that on trade matters, he treats America's foes and friends alike. There's no difference between friend and foe when it comes to trade matters because he's determined to close America's bilateral trade deficits with all countries, including India. But India's trade surplus with the US is actually quite small compared to America's trade deficits with a number of other countries, from China to Japan to Taiwan. You know, these countries have large trade surpluses with the US. But I think there is hope that after the rocky period under Joe Biden, that things may improve under Trump, because Trump, as you rightly point out, is first and foremost a deal maker, and so is Modi. And I think that it's possible for Trump and Modi to work out a restoration of this very vital relationship. It's a relationship that is vital to the interests of both the US and India. And I think that this meeting on Thursday at the White House could be the beginning of a new era in US-India relations. We'll be turning our back to what happened under Joe Biden and looking forward to a stronger relationship with the US.
You know, we'll talk about what happened in Bangladesh in just a moment and how America was allegedly, or the US deep state was allegedly interfering in India's internal affairs in just a moment. But for the moment, I want to stay on the US-India relationship under Modi and Trump. So, Professor Chilani, more procurement of energy, more defense hardware, greater access to US goods in Indian markets, for example, maybe Harley-Davidson's, Tesla's, iPhones. What are gains for us here?
That is the key question. If you look at all the discussions, the media reports, they are all on what Trump wants. Trump clearly wants more contracts from India. He wants to sell more energy to India, more weapons to India. He wants India to help him in his mission to reduce the trade imbalance. But what does India get in return? And I think it's important to remember that if this relationship is to be restored, it'll require the two sides to also address India's concerns over American policy in South Asia, where the divergence of US-Indian interests has become stark of late.
Yes.
And we tend to forget how our own neighborhood has become more adverse for Indian interests, in large part because of American policy toward Pakistan, toward Myanmar, toward Bangladesh. It's like, in no country in India's neighborhood are the Americans and the Indians working in sync with one another.
Well, many would argue that the Americans are interfering in India's internal affairs, funding elements within our country, but that's another debate perhaps for another day, Professor Chilani. But there are reports that indicate that the US president may be introducing his entire team Trump 2.0 team, to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So what are areas of cooperation and convergence that are mutually beneficial that you see? And if I am to understand correctly, if we are to get more LNG from the US and if it's cheaper than Qatar, does that not hold India in good stead? And is that not a win-win both for the US and for India? If we get the LCA engines, if there is transfer of technology and we make those engines in India, isn't that a win-win both for the US and India?
Well, if the LNG from the US is cheaper from any other source, obviously it would be a great, provide a great benefit to Indian economy. But I think more importantly, as you know, that Trump in his inaugural address said that he's going to pressure OPEC leader Saudi Arabia to help lower global crude prices. And domestically, he has promised to drill, baby, drill. That is, to boost domestic production. Both these steps will benefit the Indian economy significantly because India is now, in terms of what the Paris-based International Energy Institute says, that now India is the largest driver of global oil demand. So lower oil prices will greatly benefit the Indian economy. But having said that, what Trump basically wants is that India should be buying lots of energy and lots of American weapons. India is already buying lots of American weapons and it's been buying a lot of energy from the US. People don't realize that in Trump's first term, when he exerted pressure on India, and he exerted pressure on India quietly, not publicly, India's imports of American oil and petroleum products from 2019 for 4 years in a row went up dramatically, according to US government data. So India is susceptible to American pressure, and we have seen that from the surge in Indian imports of American oil and petroleum products until the Russian invasion of Ukraine opened up cheaper Russian oil for India. So India, and given the fact that now Russian oil...
Sir, I want to, for a moment, take you to live images that are coming in from Paris, and these are very, very crucial images, once again, of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the French President Emmanuel Macron. And look at that bonhomie, look at that partnership. Again, a partnership that's held India in great stead over decades and only improved year on year. Professor Chilani, for a moment, I want to bring you to the India-France relationship, the business partnership. And this is very, very crucial for the shared goals of India and France, which is a multipolar world, and where India and France both are very strong voices of this multipolar world, Professor Chilani.
France has become India's most important partner in Europe. It's very interesting how the Indo-French relationship has really taken off. It has thrived under Modi and under Macron. They have this personal rapport, just the way Trump and Modi have. And that always helps in international relations. But the fact is that France has become a steady partner of India in several areas, including defense. And it's very keen to expand its defense collaboration with India by selling more weapons to India. That's another thing that is common between France and the Trump administration, that both Macron and Trump are both pushing India to import more weapons. India is already the world's largest weapons importer.
But for, just for the benefit of our viewers, one crucial difference that we've seen, look, Russia is a great partner, a great strategic partner of India. So is France, so is the United States of America. But post-Pokhran nuclear tests in 1998, many restrictions, many sanctions. Professor Chilani, France was one country that said, you did what you did in your national interest. Go ahead, we're open for business.
Well, that was the French position publicly, but France was part of the US-led technology control regime. So India faced sanctions for a number of decades, for more than 3 decades after
which
the
set back the light
1974
combat
test.
aircraft. Yes. After 1974. I'm talking about the 1998 Pokhran test.
Yes.
And where the relationship actually, soared in a very big way, and especially now with Prime Minister Modi buying those Rafales, and now there's conversation about buying the Rafale Marines, additional Scorpion submarines, 3 of them. Would we also be looking at that French fighter jet engine for India in case there's transfer of technology? That may not help the LCA project, but for future, Professor Chilani.
My view, Gaurav, and you are also a person who looks at defense matters very closely, that India's priority ought to be on strengthening its border security. All our problems under successive prime ministers are because we have not focused on upgrading our border security. We keep focusing on buying these very expensive weapon systems from the West, from Russia and elsewhere, but we neglect the most essential element of national security, which is effective border security. Look at all these things that are happening. The Chin rebels, armed rebels coming into Manipur, arms coming into Manipur. The standoff with China happened. Why? Because of Chinese encroachments. Or you go back to what happened under Vajpayee, the Kargil War, the various developments, the terror attacks that have happened. All because we have not invested sufficiently in border security. Our first and foremost priority should be to improve our border security and focus less on buying these very expensive weapon systems, because the last war we fought was, half a century ago in 1971. Yes. And we don't know when these new weapon systems that we've been buying of late, when these weapon systems will be actually used in combat. But we know how China has changed the territorial status quo. The territorial status quo in Eastern Ladakh, without firing a single shot. Without firing a single shot, they have managed. So
but perhaps if we have stronger weapons of deterrence, it may deter China like Balakot deterred Pakistan if it did from spreading more terror beyond Jammu and Kashmir. That's another debate and a much, much longer debate, Professor Chilani. And it's always such a pleasure and a privilege to discuss and debate this with you over the next several days. We shall continue to do that, but I've run out of time on this part of the show. For joining me here on India Today, many thanks. And I want to leave you with these images of Prime Minister Narendra Modi with the French President Emmanuel Macron. There's lots on the table there in terms of de-risking global economy, diversifying production, more supply chain, deeper business ties, manufacturing and healthcare, defense manufacturing, aerospace, so much that's being talked about between India and France. I leave you with these images. Many thanks for watching.